Hey Cookie Monsters! So I want to do a quick video reviewing two series that I absolutely love that I read kind of recently. One is the Captive Prince trilogy that I read like a couple months ago. Whitney recommended that to me and I loved it, and it like broke my heart and I loved it and it was so incredible and left me a mess after I finished. And then the one I just finished is All for the Game by Nora Sakovic. That's the name of the series, but the books each have different names. So they're both trilogies and I love them both, and I'm kind of going through a little bit of a book depression from the All for the Game series trilogy because I just finished it, but both of them are incredible. And I'm not gonna have a spoiler one I think for Captive Prince because I just waited too long and I just don't think I have enough of my thoughts fresh in my head anymore, so that's kind of a sad thing. But and now I'm like, I'm not even gonna hold them up to you guys because I read both of them. One of them I read Captive Prince, all three books from the library, which had been returned a long time ago, and I'm reading the three All for the Games. I own them on my, not on my Kindle, but on the Kindle app on my phone. Anyway, so I have like very little space on my camera, so I'm gonna just try to like get through them both quickly because I kind of just want to let you guys know what I like about them, but I'm not gonna go into spoilers. So Captive Prince. It is, okay, both of these books need like trigger warnings. So I'm going to give you all the trigger warnings now and then explain not why they're not important, but like why giving the trigger warnings makes the book sound worse than it actually is. I don't want to say it's erotica, but I mean it comes across as erotica. In reality, there's a lot less sex than it seems like when you start reading it. I'd say the first book has the most shocking scenes, and then it gets like more normal as it goes on. But yeah, it's definitely very open about sex. Like there's almost no female characters. I know this should be something that bothers me, but it doesn't. Like I didn't really care about that, but I have seen people mention that in their reviews, so I just thought I'd mention it. There's like mentions of, not like explicitly, like you don't see anything explicit, but there is pedophilia in this book. There is like abuse kind of, and well, not kind of, but I just don't want to get into details. And there is some consensual stuff, and that's not good. But I didn't say the name of the author. C.S. Pacat. Sorry. I'm so sorry. Yeah, so I love this book though. And it's like, it's not because I condone those things. For most of those things are not portrayed in a positive way. They are portrayed in a bad way. But they are there in the book, and I thought I should mention that. There's Captive Prince, Prince's Gambit, and King's Rising. People say the second book is the best. I just liked all of them so much. Like I don't even think I could rank them. It's just, oh, so good. Okay, so basically I'm gonna set this up for you because there's a lot of like things to set up, but once you understand it, it's like super simple. It's like that kind of like a vaguely Middle Ages sort of thing that like books tend to have, right? There's two kingdoms. One is called Vir, and it's like very French, like the culture. And then one is called Aquilos, and it's very Greek. But they're like different centuries type. Like one is almost like ancient Greek and the other one's like 1400s France. So it doesn't really make any sense, but whatever. So these two countries hate each other, and I'm gonna set up the people that matter. In Aquilos, there is a king. The king has a son named Castor who is a bastard. Even though he's the older son, the younger son, Damon, is going to be king because he's a legitimate child. That's how it works. They are enemies with this neighboring country to the north called Vir, and 8 years before the story starts, Damon and his father are at war with them. Their army kills the king of Vir, and the king of Vir has two sons, and Damon and Auguste, the two princes of the two nations, right? They fight each other and Damon wins, so Auguste is killed. So now the younger son, Laurent, is the heir to the throne of Vir, but he's like 13 at that time, and then like fast forward to now, he's like almost about to turn 21, which is when you would inherit. So until then, his father, who's dead, has a brother. He's called the regent, so it's like the king's uncle, and he's like holding the throne for him until he's of age. So that's all you need to know to like set up the people. And the book opens with the king of Aquilos is really sick and then he dies, and then Damon should be the next king, you know, like the king is dead, long live the king. But Castor betrays him, his bastard brother, right? They come in and they basically say your brother's the king, and they tell everyone in the country that Damon is dead, that he also died with his father out of grief or whatever, and they basically are trying to like build their own peace treaty with Vir. So they tie him up and send him as a pleasure slave to Laurent. So now he's in enemy territory, and he can't let anyone know that he's not just like a random ass slave, because he's literally just been sold to the person whose older brother he killed. So like he's really in danger now, and he is not obviously used to being a slave. He's a prince. It's crazy because he has to like hide his identity, and Laurent's kind of like cruel and crazy, and you're like not sure what you think about him in the first book, and it's just like a lot of like tension between the two of them because he refuses to like listen to him. Damon refuses to listen to Laurent. That's like the backdrop of the story, but the real story is the political intrigue, in my opinion. It reads a lot like A Song of Ice and Fire or Game of Thrones, almost more like Game of Thrones the show, because there is sex in Game of Thrones and nudity and stuff like that, and I guess there are people who watch it just for that, but I would assume there's like most people are also at least somewhat intrigued by the political story that's going on. Everyone's stabbing each other's backs and like lying about this and that, and people who you think are doing this are really doing that, making it look as if the other person did it and pinning the blame on that. Like, that's what the story is about. The two countries have a lot of stuff going on with their politics, and you can't trust anybody. And that's what makes this book so good. I mean, like, Damon, I love him. He's a lovable character and he's amazing and he's just the best. And Laurent's also really, really cool and interesting character. There are other side characters who are amazing. But, like, I'm so invested in the story of, like, is there going to be a war? And if there is, then who's doing this and who's doing that? And you thought this person sent that person. And, like, that's just what makes the book so amazing. So I just want to say there are definitely explicit sex scenes and there are definitely things that are, like, edgy, I guess, but personally I would totally recommend this book, not a question. If those things are not like gonna bother you, definitely read it. It is so interesting, so well written, so well thought out. I have seen people who like complain there's a lot of like high language in the book, that like just like words like on a regular basis that I did not know the meaning of, but I don't know, I thought it was just really, really well written and well planned out, and I like spent like at least like 10 times per book going like, like totally didn't see twists coming. There is one twist that's not really a twist and I thought I was a genius for figuring it out, but apparently everyone did, so whatever. There's a lot of like raw emotional tension moments that like I live for that stuff, so yeah. So I highly recommend that book. Moving on to All for the Game. I'm gonna try to get through this quickly. Because also there's a lot to set up. Basically, it's about this kid named Neil Jotson. He is on the run. His dad is like a mobster murderer person, and so he had a little bit of a crazy upbringing, and his mom, when he was like 10, basically was like, I'm out, and they've been on the run ever since, and their dad's been chasing them, and so he spent his whole life basically on the run. His mom died a year before the story starts, so now he's really alone and trying to stay hidden and away from his dad. And there's this game called Xe, which is kind of like a cross between lacrosse and hockey, but there's no like ice, it's just like in terms of like the full contact. And it's kind of similar to soccer in that, like, you know, you use these rackets and you try to like hit a goal in a kind of like boxed in stadium court thing, and it's this game that he grew up on, and he has no family now and he's like on the run. It's the only thing he loves in life, so he like enrolls in a high school and like plays on their team, and then gets the attention of this like really crappy school called Palmetto State University, which is the lowest ranked Xe team in NCAA. But they want to recruit him, and even though he knows it's a terrible idea because he might end up being in the news and then maybe his dad's gonna figure out where he is and like come kill him, he signs up for it because he just loves this sport so much. And there's all this interesting stuff because there's like this really important player named Kevin Day, who everyone thought was the coolest player ever, and then like the year before had broken his playing arm, so he had like dropped out from the best team ever and then moved to like coach the worst team ever. So now he's in the Palmetto State University team with Neil, but Neil's terrified that Kevin's gonna realize who he is because he's met him once in his life, and if he figures out, then he'll like lead him back to his dad, so that's like also a big worry of Neil. And then Kevin like learns to play with his other hand, so he's playing with him, and it's all about like he's trying to like get really, really good at this game, but there's always this looming like danger of his dad and his past like coming back to haunt him. Palmetto State University, their team is called the Foxes, and their coach, his thing is that he uses his team to like help troubled kids. Like obviously he can tell that Neil comes from a bad background, and a lot of the people on the team come from these really like tough backgrounds, and they have all these different issues and problems, and these twins named Aaron and Andrew and their cousin Nikki, and they're like really important characters. Like mostly the teammates on the team are the important characters, but because all of these people come from these bad backgrounds, they all have like all sorts of like trust issues and anger issues and this and that, and so it's really hard for them to like come together as a team to ever be good, which is why they're the lowest ranked team in the NCAA. So a lot of it is on like trying to like get them to come together as a team. If you're not interested in learning a sport that's like in following a sport, like I would not recommend this book, because even though like definitely I think the storyline of the inter-character relationships and all that is the most interesting part of it. There's a ton of Xe games. You're gonna have to follow a lot of Xe games, and I found that thrilling and exciting, and I was so into it, even though I'm not usually the type who's into sports books. So I mean, but if you're totally not interested, you'd spend a lot of time flipping through the book getting to like the next chapter, because I mean, like, you're gonna have to sign up for a lot of XE game action. You know, like after they get past the important games, they get to part where, like, you know, they're not gonna do a play-by-play of every single game that they do, but there's definitely that. Like, you have to be okay with the sports stuff. But yeah, there's a lot more to the story than just that. It's about different characters like connecting, and it's told mostly from Neil's point of view, and I love him more than, oh, I love Neil so much. Like, everyone's always trying to hurt him. It's so unfair, all the things that happen to him, but he's just like a real fighter, and he's so strong, and he won't back down, and he's just such a great character to root for. And so many of the other characters are also just incredible characters. It's hard to explain. Like, the book is really confusing if you're reading and you're not really understanding what's happening. Like, just keep going. I promise you, it's amazing. It's worth it. Have I mentioned this book is self-published, so I think that's really cool to support a self-published author. But also, the first book is free on Kindle. The second and third book are 99 cents. You can get the entire trilogy for $2 for actually $1.98. So just give it a chance. I definitely recommend it. One thing I will say, I'm going to link below, is the rules of XD for some reason are not put into the book until the end of the second book. So if you do read this book, and I really, really recommend giving it a go, I'm going to link that so you can read the rules, because I really think they should have put them before the first book even starts, because it's really important. Like, it's the whole book is like about XE, and you really should know how it's played, and it's not complicated at all. So just like read those couple pages and then you'll be good to go. My friend like sent me the rules, so I was able to like follow along, but if I hadn't known that, I would have been really annoyed that like I went through 2 out of 3 books before I even learned how to play the game that they're always playing. There was like some really terrible things happening in this book. There's like, you know, I don't want to go into details, but people have gone through really bad pasts, like abuse, and there's like kind of like torture in it. Like, it gets really bad at times, so I definitely want to like make that clear, especially as a trigger warning kind of thing. If someone's been abused, I would probably say stay away from this book, because I cannot imagine that probably would bring up pretty bad memories or something. But I think if you're willing to like read this kind of stuff, I mean, it was a great book, and it made me cry a lot, and I just like love these characters so fiercely, and it's like a great storyline in terms of thrill, but also in terms of just like understanding people and like giving them a chance, and like, yeah, I don't know. I just love that book so much. So yeah, I definitely recommend both of these trilogies. They both like changed my life, I swear, in the last couple months, so definitely give them both a go. They're both not super conventional, but I just love them. All right, thanks so much for watching. Bye!